Hi, I'm Jim Ward of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode in our History Bite series. Today, we will discuss the Ghost Army of World War II, a top secret unit of 1,100 American artists, designers, and sound engineers who helped to win World War II by staging elaborate ruses that fooled the forces of Nazi Germany about the location and size of Allied forces. Members of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops and the 3133rd Signal Company, who literally practiced the art of war, saved the lives of thousands of American servicemen and earned one of the country's highest civilian honors. Inspired by the success of British subterfuge in North Africa earlier in the war, the U.S. Army created the Ghost Army in January 1944 as a self-contained unit designed specifically to carry out visual, sonic, and radio deception in time for D-Day. The brainchild of London-based U.S. Army planners Billy Harris and Ralph Ingersoll, the Ghost Army was, quote, more theatrical than military, wrote Captain Fred Fox in the official history of the 23rd. Quote, it was like a traveling roadshow that went up and down the front lines impersonating the real fighting outfits, end quote. Led by Colonel Harry L. Reeder, the unit included graduates of West Point and former Army Specialized Training Program participants. Fashion designer Bill Blass and painter Ellsworth Kelly were among the artists, ad men, radio broadcasters, sound experts, actors, architects, and set designers handpicked for the Ghost Army, which reportedly had one of the Army's highest collective IQs with a 119 average. Employing inflatable decoys, fake radio chatter, and loudspeakers that blared sound effects, the Ghost Army could simulate a force 30 times its size as it operated as close as a quarter mile from the front lines. Quote, rarely, if ever, has there been a group of such a few men which had so great an influence on the outcome of a major military campaign, declared a U.S. Army report. Befitting its name, the Ghost Army worked under the cloak of night. Camouflage experts used gasoline-fueled air compressors to inflate rubber tanks, jeeps, trucks, artillery, and aircraft that artists painted with details authentic enough to deceive Nazi aerial reconnaissance, according to a December 6, 1945 report in the Meriden Daily Journal. Radio specialists sent misleading communications and even mimicked operators' unique styles to add authenticity to their fake reports. Sound engineers blared pre-recorded sounds of military drills and movements on enormous speakers that, in some instances, could be heard 15 miles away. Most of the Ghost Army arrived in England in May 1944, as D-Day preparations were being finalized. 4 members joined the D-Day landing at Normandy, and a 17-man platoon came ashore on Omaha Beach 8 days later to create dummy artillery placements that drew fire from the Germans. The Ghost Army engaged in its first large-scale deceptions in the summer of 1944 as it deployed 50 dummy tanks and positioned sound trucks within a few hundred yards of the front line during the siege of the French port of Brest. As part of Operation Brittany, the Ghost Army deceived the Germans about the location of General George Patton's Third Army, which eluded the enemy and raced eastward across France. When a gap opened in Patton's line during his attack of the fortified French city of Metz in September 1944, the Ghost Army again aided the general. Until a division arrived to plug the gap, the illusionists held the precarious line for 7 days with their inflatables and loudspeakers that played the sounds of rumbling tanks, shouting troops, and even sergeants barking out orders for soldiers to put out their cigarettes. The Ghost Army's radio deception also drew the Germans away from Patton's relief of the Belgian town of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. The Ghost Army pulled off its most elaborate hoax in March 1945 as part of Operation Viersen. As the Ninth Army prepared to make the dangerous crossing of the Rhine River, the Ghost Army positioned itself 10 miles south of the intended landing spot to redirect German attention. The Ghost Army inflated both 600 dummies and their own size by impersonating 2 divisions and 40,000 troops. To give the impression that the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions were amassing, radio chatter spread false reports about their intended movements, and sonic trucks blasted a soundtrack of pontoon bridge construction, artillery fire, and even officers swearing. The Ghost Army stenciled fabricated division numbers and insignias onto their vehicles and built phony headquarters and command posts manned by fake commanders and generals. They sewed counterfeit shoulder patches onto their uniforms and boisterously discussed their false intelligence in local bars and cafes to ensure their disinformation would be overheard by any lurking German spies. The ruse worked. While the Nazis attacked the Ghost Army, the Ninth Army crossed the Rhine with little resistance. Soldiers outside of the 23rd had no idea of the unit's existence. When the men were off duty, they camouflaged themselves as members of other divisions by wearing fake badges and painting different insignias on their vehicles. In reading the men's letters, you can sense their loneliness and isolation. Quote, "It is too bad I can't tell you about the places I've seen. I hope I'll be able to remember it all after I get home. Probably I will, bit by bit," wrote Sergeant Harold J. Dahl in a September 3, 1944 missive to his family. Ghost Army veteran George Dramus, a native of Ashtabula, Ohio, who was drafted in 1942 at age 18, remembers roughing it most of the time, sleeping outside and often lacking adequate supplies. Quote, "It was just a wild and woolly period of time, but it was very interesting," said Dramus. "I could hear fighting all the time, bullets whizzing by," end quote. After getting drafted, Dramus took a Morse code test and was selected for the Signal Company's special radio team. He took part in the Normandy landings on D-Day and a deception campaign conducted ahead of the Battle for Brest in August and September 1944. In addition to sending fake radio transmissions, Dramus and his comrades intercepted German radio signals. Following the war, Ghost Army members returned home and settled into careers in advertising, architecture, design, theater, art, fashion, and radio. For decades, their exploits remained little known as members followed strict orders to not even tell their families about the Ghost Army, lest a similar unit needed to be deployed against a new enemy in the Cold War, the Soviet Union. While a few articles about the Ghost Army slipped through the censors in the immediate aftermath of the war, the military did not officially declassify information about the outfit until 1996. In February 2022, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops and the 3133rd Signal Company Special were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal for, quote, "their unique and highly distinguished service in conducting deception operations." Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched on YouTube, hit subscribe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.